Hello, hello. Welcome to another medical school headquarters workshop. Hi, Miss Courtney, you're here with me. People are logging in. As you are logging in, please go to your chat. It's probably going to say to hosts and panelists. Change it to say to everyone and type in a hello. I'd love to know where you're watching from. I'd also love one word on your mood. Are you happy? Are you excited? Are you stressed? Are you sad? Are you tired? I myself am in Ohio and I am happy stressed. I'm a combo. I'm cheating. I'm doing two words. All right. Oh, blessed stressed. Interesting. Dallas is ready to rest. San Jose is stressed. Another SJ, San Jose, Atlanta, excited, stress. Okay, stress.
Not a lot of stressors.
I mean, I can relate, right?
Yeah.
I myself had to pick between happy and stressed. So
It's that time of year.
it's true. All right. Well, we're gonna give it another minute. We've got another advisor or two, maybe one more advisor joining us. So as we're waiting for people to log in, and letting you guys log in, we'll just chit chat for a minute here. So Courtney, maybe big news from AACOMAS yesterday, maybe news that doesn't really change anything. Maybe everyone on this call hasn't even heard about that news. So for those of you, hi Ryan, he's with us now. For those of you who may not have seen, AACOMAS announced that they'll start transmitting med school applications even earlier than they historically have. And then they ended with this sort of vague, hey, if you're not sure what that means with your med school, please call them. I'm going to offer right now a pro tip. Don't call them yet. They just got the news. Let them digest. But Courtney, what do you think about this? What's this mean?
I am so glad that I am with MSHQ and MAP now, and I'm not having to deal with this. No, this has been a topic actually that's come up past 2-3 cycles in our or in the old council that I was part of with the other deans and directors of admissions or admissions officers, because they want to have access. You know, some schools have shorter timelines, they move through things quickly, and you know, AMCAS has sometimes a bit of a faster turnover, so I think this is trying to get ahead of AMCAS a little bit and start sending out secondaries fast. You know, this I can see causing some issues if I'm looking at it from a director standpoint on what you feel comfortable moving forward with or not for secondaries and for processing. So it's not new news since I've been privy to that conversation, but I do think you know, there's going to be bits and pieces that are still coming in, so it may cause a little bit of mayhem here at the beginning, but I would take advantage of it. You know, you've submitted it, so yeah.
So let me add some clarification as well. Hello, Verinia. Who? I thought someone's in Application Academy right now.
I will be in 30. No, I will be in an hour.
Oh, okay.
So,
there's an hour overlap the other way. Okay.
Yeah, so I can do either.
Okay.
Whatever
cool. Let's hang out.
Let's figure out hang out. Sure.
Yeah. So I'll read the message just so students know. It says, important note, beginning with the 2023-2024 AACOMAS cycle, AACOMAS will begin releasing in progress applications to institutions as they become available, which will begin the day of the application launch, May 4th, 2023 this year. Applications will no longer be held for release until June 15th, which has historically been, hey, you could submit May 10th, but schools will not have access to applications until that June 15th or mid-June timeframe. That's the history of AACOMAS as far as I remember. That's how AMCAS works as well. The question was, what does in progress mean? And there has been a clarification, the same lady, and this is from Helene Cameron. Is that how you say her name, Courtney?
Yep.
Helene
Dr.
Cameron, who is the Vice President for Undergraduate Medical Education Services at the American Association of College of Osteopathic Medicine. So this is the bigwig at ACOM.
She's in charge.
She said once a student selects a program, right, designates a program, the application will be released as an in-progress status so that colleges of osteopathic medicines may engage in their own nurturing strategies with potential applicants. Now, I still have questions. Does that mean they just see, hey, Johnny and Johnny's email address? Does that mean they can see the application as the student sitting there typing and they can go, ooh, look at what they're saying? Do you know, Courtney?
So I know before, looking at my admin sign, I could see the in progress number. So the amount of applications that were still unverified in progress, but I couldn't see a ton of information on them if they hadn't filled it out. But yes, you will probably be privy to some information. Yes.
Okay. So, moral of the story, do not designate any schools until you're ready to apply. I don't, what is the benefit other than marketing for the medical schools? There's no benefit to the student here. Zero.
I would say just trying to get people in the system, communicating with them faster or ahead of AMCAS.
And
I like that extra bit. Ahead of AMCAS. Yeah.
And I know I'm joining late. Sorry. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I just wanted to add to what you were saying, Ryan, to, not only should you wait to designate your schools, but thoroughly review your application. Make sure that, there's no typos anywhere, that everything is the way it needs to be.
Yeah.
Because once it's gone,
Yeah.
evidently it's gone.
All right. So we started in the middle,
Yeah.
right? At 5:01, Courtney and I just started chit-chatting about this big AACOMAS news because it was big news, right? So let's take a minute here. All the advisors who are here to present are here. Hello, team. We've got a healthy amount of attendees who've logged in, who've told us their location. And I asked for emotion, but it turned out to just be stress level for like 90% of you. Want to use relaxed. I really want to like shake your hand, Morgan.
Because it's Florida.
Florida, right? But yeah, let's back up a minute. Let's do introductions. Let's talk about what today's session is going to be about. We've got a deck for you, not a ton of slides. There's going to be lots of time for Q&A today, but let's do it who's who. I'll start since I've already got my motor mouth running. I'm Rachel. I am a pre-med advisor who's been advising students for 20 years. I'm a co-founder of MAPT, Chief Operations Officer at Medical School Headquarters, which just means I try to help the trains run on time, sometimes with better results than others. But I'm here to answer all your questions about the application process today, and I'm excited to have my peers with me. Ryan Gray, say hello.
Hola, ¿cómo está? Jambo,
Tell them about
Habariaco.
yourself.
That's the only two I know. Yeah, I'm Ryan Gray. I am the founder of Medical School Headquarters, co-founder of MAPT. I'm a physician by training. I no longer practice, and now I get to hang out with these cool folks every single day. So, and all of you students. And I make videos that you probably have seen me on, and I record podcasts and all of that fun stuff. So, yeah, that's me.
You need to pass it to the next person.
Okay, Verinia.
Gee, thanks. Hi, I'm Verinia Granum. I'm an admissions advisor here at MAPT. And while Ryan is the face of the company, I think of myself as the back of the company.
You are the spine.
Thank you. Oh, wow.
Are you saying I don't have a backbone?
Well,
I
we
didn't
could
say
probably
that.
use two.
Rachel. No, I am one of the admissions advisor here with this wonderful team. I've been also in academic advising, pre-health advising for 20 years now. And I'm excited to be here today talking about all this stuff with applications and changes, which is extremely stressful for everyone. So hopefully you get some good out of this presentation.
Mm-hmm. You want to pass the court?
Courtney, sure.
My name's Courtney Lewis, prior director of admissions at one of the osteopathic schools and vice chair of the Council of Admissions Officers for osteopathic medical schools. But learned and still know about admissions processes on the MD side and the AMCAS application. Certainly had a lot of insight into that, just because the people that I worked with when they were at ACOM were previously at AMCAS. So it's all integrated, and yeah, happy to be here. Excited to chat out the ins and outs of all of this stuff from admin side or background side.
Yep. All right.
Sweet.
Am I doing screen share, Ryan, or are you?
Sure. Go ahead. For the 50 or so people in the chat, what is the one thing you're most stressed about with the application cycle? Want to know. Finding the right school, says Josephine. Getting in, obviously. Let's leave getting in, like, obviously. Mallory says MCAT. Let's leave MCAT out of it, right? Obviously, that's a big one. Let's talk about the application specifically.
The actual application.
Yeah, personal statement, getting it in timely. Yep.
I'd say getting in secondaries in a timely way, because there's so many prompts.
Yes, that tidal wave. Putting my heart into it and feeling defeated again. Sasha sounds like Sasha's a reapplicant, sounds like. That stings. I was a reapplicant, Sasha. You get this idea that, oh my gosh, I can never be a physician because these schools didn't want me. And that's not the message they're sending. They're just saying, not right now or not with us.
Yep.
Cool.
All right. Cool. So got some key dates here. We've thrown around a bunch of acronyms, right? AMCAS, AACOMAS, TMDSAS. You guys probably know what that stuff means, but you type in the chat, you tell us, what's the major difference between AMCAS, TMDS, and AACOMAS? What do those letters signify? Yeah.
MD, DO, Texas.
You guys got it. So AMCAS is where the Common Application Service for MD or allopathic schools. TMDSAS stands for Texas Medical Dental School Application Service. So that's Texas schools, most Texas schools, regardless of whether they're MD or DO. And then AACOMAS is the Central Application Service for DO schools or osteopathic schools. So you've got it. So
and our colleague, Dr. Scott Wright, who can't be here today, would like us to remember that TMDSAS was the first centralized application service to medical schools.
Yeah, it's true. People are always like, why does Texas have to be different? It's like Texas made the central app, and then other groups were like, oh, that was a good idea.
Texas loves Texas.
That's
why.
so true. All right. So
Yeah.
key dates here, Ryan. Talk about what you're looking at on this screen.
Yeah, so we can see here May 2nd, AMCAS and AACOMAS, or TMDSAS rather, open up. That means you can open up the application. What you should do that first day is go and print out, for AMCAS specifically, transcript request forms. TMDSAS will let you know later on in the cycle when they want your transcripts, so you don't need to rush with transcripts for TMDSAS. AMCAS, go send those transcript request forms. If you're uploading letters of recommendations directly into AMCAS, you can start printing out your letter of recommendations to the form to send to your letter writers, and your letter writers can upload directly, or you can start collecting them now through my LORs, which is part of MAPT. So that's May 2nd. May the 4th be with you is AACOMAS. That is when AACOMAS opens. And as we saw, you can submit, as we talked about earlier, you can submit AACOMAS immediately. You could open AACOMAS and submit without filling out anything other than adding one school. And you can technically submit that. I wouldn't recommend that, but you could do that. And last year, I believe it was last year, I don't think it was 2 years ago. Last year was the first year TMDSAS had a delay in their submission. So you can see here it's May 16th. And then AMCAS submission is May 30th. So there's less of a rush of like, it's open, I got to fill it all out and submit it really quick. Like you can take a couple weeks for TMDSAS. You can take a month for AMCAS. I mean, you should be working on all of this stuff right now and then start copying and pasting later on.
Right. So let's go back to that thing you just said. They don't open until early May. You should be working on all of this stuff right now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
How do they do that? How do they know what the essays are? How do they know what the prompts are?
Well, they could open up a free Mapped account and just go to our application simulator and see what all that looks
yeah.
like.
That's a
Or
good
they can open
idea.
up an AMCAS handbook and
Right.
look and see.
Yep.
But yeah, we have all of the essay prompts and everything inside of Mapped. The only change is that AMCAS, although it's still not public, is getting rid of the disadvantaged essay and
Right.
replacing or adding an other impactful experiences essay. And so I'm super excited about the change. It doesn't really change the fact that for someone who wanted to mark themselves disadvantaged can't. Well, they still can. It's just called something else. So
Right.
yeah, so go check that out.
All right. Someone in the chat just said, can you explain the similarities and differences between these three services? And hey, look what my next slide is. I already showed it to you once because I keep bumping my mouse. There it is. Wall of data. All right, so let's talk through this.
Yeah. Who wants to go?
I'll start about AMCAS. So AMCAS, like we said, is where you apply to most allopathic schools where you get MD degrees, a few Texas exceptions there. All three services have a personal statement that's about 5,000 characters. It's 5,300 for AMCAS and AACOMAS versus 5,000 for Texas, but basically one personal statement. Here's the thing about the personal statement. The prompt is, why medicine? The number one mistake that people make with a personal statement is write a really lovely essay that answers a different question. We'll come back to that later. We've got lots of personal statement workshops, but I just want to point out there, why medicine? That's what that essay is for. All of the application services have some form of like activities or extracurriculars or achievement or work. It has lots of different names, but they do have different shapes. So AMCAS, and I'm talking about AMCAS first, not because it's the most important, but because most med schools are under the AMCAS umbrella. You have 15 activity spots. And so a lot of people think of that as, oh, I have 15 activities I can list. True. More importantly, you have 15 activities essays you can write, each with a 700 character limit. In addition, you can designate 3 of those activities as most meaningful, and that gives you a separate essay to write. So not more space in your activities essay, but you'll actually have potentially up to 18 essays, right? So 15 about your activities and then 3 most meaningful essays. And then there's some fees. And like we just talked about, you'll be able to start working on AMCAS in early May, but you won't be able to actually submit until late May.
Yeah. And there's a typo for TMDSAS that should not say can immediately submit application, as we just saw from the previous slide.
Oh, right. It should
It's
say
May
May
16th.
16th. Yeah, that's wrong. Okay. Courtney, you're the AACOMAS pro. You want to talk about AACOMAS?
Sure. So similarities, you can see, right? The character count, the way you write the main activities sections. I would say one of the biggest differences is the amount of activities you can put, essentially unlimited, like it says there. So you're going to be writing about extracurriculars, which can include hobbies, clubs and organizations, things like that. One time I saw somebody put being a husband, and I liked that they put that because it also asks you for an end date, and that end date was like the end of the cycle. So I don't know if his marriage is doomed, but it allows you to put kind of whatever you want there. You're going to be writing about med experience, non-med experience, and then community volunteer hours. So those are your categories. Essentially, the essays are going to be the same. LORs may be different between the two, but the similarities will probably be the 2 science professors and a physician. Those I think are carryover, but the amount of total is 6 versus AMCAS. I think you can have up to 10, even though most people don't submit that. We don't have any they do not have any most meaningful extra essays. So all of your activities are limited to the 600 character count. And then same, Texas is within the Texas system, and except for Incarnate Word, they use AACOMAS, and yeah.
And UNT, HSC, TCU,
Oh,
all of those
yeah.
letters is AMCAS.
TCOM, yeah. Yep.
Rachel, you're muted. Sorry.
Thanks. Yeah, I was just saying, for those of you that want to take a screenshot, just notice we made a typo, bottom bullet point on Texas. That should say May 16th, as we showed you here.
Yeah, and then the Texas does not also include, which I've updated on the slides already. So I don't know if you
I'll
want to
refresh.
download and bring
If
back
you already
up.
fixed it, yeah, I'll reload a new screen share. Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you.
Texas also has 2 additional essays. One is a required essay that is all about the educational environment of others, how you're going to add to that educational environment of others. And the optional essay is all about, basically, is there anything else you want to tell us that you haven't otherwise discussed in your application? Now, even TMDSAS, or at least one representative at TMDSAS, who's a pretty high up, who's a friend, is like, that's not optional. You need to write that essay. So the optional essay on TMDSAS is required. Think of it in that way. Ryan asks, should I be using every single character in my personal statement, or is it okay to be 150 characters below the maximum? That's fine.
Yep.
It's weird to see, especially for like 5,300 characters. It's weird to see like 4,000, 3,500. But 150, you're fine.
Yep.
My guess is that Ryan is in the military. Ryan, are you a military dude? No. Okay.
No.
In the military, we had this stupid game for our officer performance reports where you weren't allowed to have white space. So there were these like fillable PDF forms that had to have a bullet point for each line. And if there was a space at the end, like empty white space, that was considered bad. You had to fill it out completely. And it was one of those things that drove me nuts. And one of the big reasons why I'm like, I'm not fit for military service if this is the kind of crap that we're wasting our energy on.
Do you just justify every line?
No, it was a fillable PDF. It was like a stupid little box.
Yeah, like 24-point font.
Yeah.
So dumb. Anyway.
All right, so we have refreshed. If you're a screenshotter, now's the time. The information is now accurate in the right column.
There you go.
And then I guess what we'll say is things change, right? Texas changed a date last year. AACOMAS changed a date yesterday. When in doubt, you're going to refer to these 3 groups themselves. They all have great handbooks. Right now, be aware that the handbooks that are posted are still for the 2023 entry year. So be looking for that shift over. But typically sometime in late March, early April, AMCAS releases the handbook that's a PDF for them for the following med school cycle. AACOMAS and Texas are a little bit more 21st century. Instead of making you deal with a 180-page PDF, they have a searchable website. Hey, who knew that might be more friendly? But either way, if you're applying to these application services, you need to go to where their handbooks, their support pages are, bookmark them, and be very unabashed about using Control F type for keyword. I do actually personally read the AMCAS handbook once a year, every year, because I feel like for my job I should. Is it an exciting read? But you want to skim it to know what's in there. And then that makes it easier to search later when you're like, what did they say about international schools? I don't know, but I can Control F international. So yeah, we are experts, and also always go to the source.
Yep. So question is, okay, AACOMAS changed, Courtney. When is going to be an ideal time to submit an application now? Does it change? Has this changed? When?
No, you still want to be early. You still want to be soon. So really, I think it's just when you plug in the designation specific bits, when you're ready to kind of, everything's complete, you're ready to hit submit instead of, going in, designating, filling out your biographical information and stuff like that. I think you just go in, fill out your application. Once it's concrete, ready to go, complete, then you designate, then it'll go out. But I still think timeline is exactly the same. Sooner the better, always.
Yeah.
Sooner the better, but not till you're ready.
Yes.
Yeah, which kind of tells me if DO schools want this information, then we should be letting DO schools know, hey, this MAPT member designated your school on their med school list inside of MAPT. Would you like to contact them? Of course, we'd want the student's permission to do that.
But students may well want to go to, those kinds of events.
Yep.
All right, I see someone in the chat had asked if we could share the calendar one more time. So there you go. Take your little screenshots, friends.
And there are more dates in the cycle for each one
Yes.
of these application systems. So
Yeah,
maybe
these aren't all the
those-
key dates. These are the
Yeah.
starting key dates.
Yep. Once those come out, bookmark that page on each of the platforms that you're holding applications for, because there's traffic guidelines, which have important dates. There are ways to track this that you need to keep an eye on outside of the individual dates that the schools place on you within those timelines.
Yeah, very important point.
Yep.
All right.
So lots of good questions coming. Can you still edit your application if you designate a school? Yes. It's not until you submit your application that a lot of it gets locked up.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you said locked up, because I've run into a couple of people who are like, oh, I was planning on making an update to this part.
Yeah.
Once you hit complete submit, almost everything is going to be locked for the duration. There are some nuances to that, but do not hit that submit completed button until you are super ready to do that and you've had somebody proofread it and you have all of your bits in.
Yeah, my friends at TMDSAS will tell me horror stories every year of students that will submit their application with the personal statement of insert personal statement here. There's like taking a note in the system and then they forget to go back and do it, or they think submit is how they save it. And so I'm like, don't you want to give them a second chance? And our friends there are like, do you really want a doctor who doesn't know how to read and just clicks buttons? I'm like, maybe.
But that's like every
Yeah.
it can be a tough one because you know exactly what happened. And usually they're calling you in a panic.
Yeah.
Don't look at it. Don't reference it.
Yep.
So yeah.
So there's a saying, RTFM. Read the manual.
Fun manual.
Read the fun manual. Read RTFM. Yeah. Read the fun manual. Be very careful before you hit submit. Once you've hit submit, very, very little can change. A few very tiny select things can change. And part of the statement you certify when you hit submit is, I've read this and I understand here are the few limited things that can change.
We never read any of that stuff. That's for the lawyers. Just click. Yeah. All right. So let's look at some more questions here. Is it always better to submit early, or does doing so place me in a quote first competitive wave of applications rolling admission style? Verena, what do you think there?
Yeah, so it's always better to submit early, precisely because of rolling admissions, right? So the earlier you are in that batch, the more seats are available, right? So that you're reviewed quickly, assuming that everything is done and you're ready to apply. Early is best.
Yeah. So add an asterisk on there, right? Because always is almost never right. So like there are instances where we see here, right? The application opens up beginning of May. Let's say a student is in some weird summer session, something other. They're not getting their transcripts back until July 10th, right? And they need those grades to show continued improved trend. Do not submit your application with the hope that you can update schools later on with your grades. If it comes to waiting a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get transcripts in, courses in, grades in that you can add to your application before you submit, it's probably better to do that if you need those grades to show academic ability.
For sure. Yeah. So always submit when you're ready. How about that?
Yeah. But Verena, I don't know if I'm ready.
I know. I know.
Yeah. If I become a student of Application Academy, do you review the application prior to hitting the submit button? It's probably something we could do during the open Q&As. It's not something we generally do. It may take a little bit too long for group coaching world.
Yeah, I'm having
Um,
trouble imagining that in a group scenario, because I mean, when we do like application renovation, which is also essentially reviewing an application, it can take 20 or 30 minutes to do one.
Yep.
So maybe in group, for sure in a one-on-one we could do that.
Yeah, I was thinking about it the other day, this like live essay review day that we have coming up. I'm like, I wonder if we should do like the week before June 30th or May 30th. The week before May 30th, have like a live application review day where we can just skim through the AMCAS application prior to submission.
Okay.
Maybe.
But if you go through Application Academy, by the time the application is open and you've been working on it all along in a group setting with us, you'll
ready.
be fine. You're ready.
And yet I always find weird stuff later on. I'm like, why did you put it in this way? Like they just enter things differently than I would expect. And so it may help.
Well, and there's some weird consequences that's like, if you leave a location blank, AMCAS will populate, chose not to disclose location, as though it was like some secret, like I was working at a shelter for domestic violence and the location is a secret. And all it means is they left it blank. So like there are things like that like sometimes you really do just need to print the PDF. I know printers, right? Like who even has a printer? They stink. But actually print it and with a pen in hand, make marks, because sometimes you're just not going to see that stuff if you don't do a physical review of the application.
Yeah, I was reviewing literally an application an hour or two ago, and the student had clinical experience for like 2 years worth of time. It was like 10,000 hours. I'm like, how did you get 10,000 hours? And she was trying to rationalize. I'm like, you can tell me all you want. That's just wrong. Like the math just doesn't work. Are you telling me, and I did the math, I mean, you telling me you did 12 hours a day, every single day without a break for this activity over these 2 years? So, and then she was in the military and she did the very common, military time is 365 days times 24 hours times 4 years that I was in. I'm like, no, that's not how you do that math.
Yeah. You see that also with like missions that people go on, they count the full 2 years or however long it is.
You don't get to count sleeping
every hour of the day.
Yeah. Typically, if you work a full-time job, you're going to work about 2,000 hours in a year. I understand there are people who are working more than 40 hours a week. So above 2,000 a year doesn't give me an automatic, oh no, but 10,000 in 2 years sounds like some pants are on fire. Right.
Yeah, that's all right. All right, more questions. Let's look. An admissions officer suggested waiting 2 weeks after you're able to submit AMCAS to submit your application in order to give the quote front runners a chance to submit so that your application isn't compared to them. I'm guessing this gives you a better chance to not be overlooked. Is this typically suggested? I've heard this advice before from a friend who's the dean of admissions at NYU. He's like, he's very biased, right? He's at NYU where they see the best of the best of the best of the best applications. And he's like, sometimes you don't want to be first because it's usually the best of the best of the best that are the gunners that are right there ready to click submit as soon as AMCAS opens. And so potentially there may be a benefit to delay. 2 weeks is not going to kill you. 2 months? Let's talk about that.
Okay. I want to weigh in on that.
Counterpoint.
Yeah. Counterpoint. Counterpoint.
Okay, so I used to be of a similar mindset where I'm like, okay, this is when the most competitive are coming in. We're going to be hyper focused on them, and then we'll kind of see the progression of the cycle. But like he was saying, if you're waiting 2-3 months, that is too much time. Seats have filled. Interviews are now in January, if that, and you never, I mean, you may not know if they have like an internal cutoff of like, if we see that you've been verified after September, you're just submitting too late. We're not going to process that because we've had 4,000 come in ahead of this. Now that might not be published, so you don't want to rule yourself out put yourself back too far. But if we're talking about a month and you need those grades and you want to feel prepared, okay. But generally what happens if you are one of those first ones and you're not maybe as competitive as a 520 MCAT and 3.9 GPA and 10,000 hours of 2 years of scribing, like you're going to go in a holding tank. You're going to go into a pool, right? And so they may not fully review your application until a bit later. It still is good though, because you're getting secondaries, and some people pre-screen their secondaries. And so until they get your application and you turn it back into them, whether it's pre-screened or not, they're not doing anything with your application. So I'd still say sooner rather than later, so you're not butting up against those things, and you'll probably end up in a holding tank if you're doing rolling admissions, which means they will get to it. But there's danger the longer out you go, you start running into things, and later means September, October, November, December timeframe, right? It's not towards the beginning.
Yeah, Ryan's got a pretty graph for us, I bet, that he drew here.
Yeah, it says my screen sharing is paused. Can you see?
Yeah, it just says has started screen sharing, but we don't actually have your picture.
Oh,
So
what's yeah, I don't know. Hold on. I screen shared and then it's just, oh, there was a button that says resume sharing. Hold on one second.
Yes, there are secondary applications for DO schools, very similar, anywhere between 2, 3, all the way up. Never going to be as many as Duke, but still you're having secondaries. Those are the only school specific parts of the application. Your master application goes out to everybody that you selected to receive it from the platform. And then the secondary application is what the school made up of questions they want to ask you that you need to return to them. So schools have that.
Yeah, I had to connect directly to my computer, not through my hub. So this is a graph I created the other day. As you were mentioning, Courtney, the longer out you go, which this is the timeline, right? As soon as we start getting to October, November, which is where they normally have their deadlines, which we want to ignore deadlines in this game. The earlier we want to be early, the longer out you go. This line here is number of seats that the med school has available. All of the medical schools in the US, the number of seats slowly goes to 0. And actually less than 0, because medical schools overprescribe and then hope that some students change their mind. And the number of applications, the number of applicants is going up and up and up and up. So I've always called it a giant game of musical chairs, and this is what I mean by that. As time goes on, more and more people are applying, and yes, lots of people apply in this time frame because they don't know any better, and they're just shooting themselves in the foot, as we said.
So all that to say, let's go back to this question of, do I submit the date opens? Do I submit week 2? Honestly, I wouldn't overthink it that much, right? Yep. We've heard from 2 different directors of admissions, one who was being represented by proxy, one who's here, who have said 2 different answers. Med schools are going to play it differently. Where I always want to be really clear is, if you fixate on when you submit your primary, you're missing the whole picture of what Ryan just showed, that competing line, because it's not just when you submit your primary, it's when you complete your application. And this gets at a lot of the questions I see coming in the chat. Can you submit your primary without your second MCAT or even your first MCAT? You can, but schools probably aren't going to look at your application without it. So when we talk about completing your application, we're talking about getting the primary in, getting your secondaries, turning them all around. So hopefully you were smart and pre-wrote so that your secondaries are completed relatively quickly, instead of you trying to write 100 essays in July or August. Getting your letters of reckon if they're not already, because people were saying, do I have to have them in with my primary? No, you don't have to. I don't know why you'd wait, but if you can't get a professor to write them sooner, as soon as possible. If you have to do Casper and preview, those are all things that kind of are acceptable to submit. Those are in that short list of what is okay after a primary is submitted. And until they're all in, most med schools aren't going to want to waste time with you.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So I brought this back up to talk specifically about that, right? If we always get the questions, can I take an MCAT at the end of June? Can I take an MCAT at the end of July? And this always comes up in the Facebook group, and they're like, well, what about 2 weeks later? And what about 2 weeks later? And what about 2 weeks later? And there's always this, well, what about? And so remember, if you took the MCAT at the end of June, you're not getting your score back until the end of July. And this is the picture you're looking at. If you take at the end of July, you're not getting your score back until the end of August. And this is when your application is complete. And this is typically when schools are going to start looking at your application. Now, obviously, don't take this graph for its exact numbers, but this is just a general idea of the picture to expect. The later you take the MCAT, the later your application is complete, the later everything is done, the less theoretically your chances are.
Yeah,
So,
if you take nothing away from this seminar, but if you take only 1 point away from the seminar, it is submit early, complete early.
Yep. So one question here, Ryan asked, how many secondaries do you need to complete for the school? Brittany, this actually is a common misconception, a common thought of like,
It is.
okay, they sent me 4 essays. Which ones do I need to complete?
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to complete all of them.
All of them.
Usually,
Usually.
every once in a while, there will be 4 required essays and 3 optional, or 3 if it applies to you.
Yeah.
What did we say before about optional or recommended? Typically with med school applications, if they say optional or recommended, that's code for required. The only time is when it's really truly not relevant to you. So for example, if there is an essay that says, we love to hear about people who have military service, please share your military service experiences here. You did not serve in the military. That's a true optional. You don't BS a military answer. Right?
No stolen valor here, please.
Right. But yeah, I mean, schools can have 0 or 1 secondary essays. There are a few crazy schools out there that have 14, 18. On average, it seems to be about 4 or 5 per school. So do the math. You're going to apply to, say, 20 schools. You might have 80 to 100 secondary essays.
Secondaryapps.com. It's being updated as we speak. So go check that out. You can go see all of the essays that are there. Most schools don't change from year to year, so you can see what to expect.
Yeah. And each one is, depending on character count or word count, probably at least as many as like your activity essays, or around that ballpark range. Sometimes they are more than that or longer than that. So if you're doing 3 to 4 per school, you're applying to 30 schools, you're having to write between 600 to 1,500 characters. It's a lot. You want to get them turned around fast. So this is why we're like, work on all this other stuff, get all of this done so you can start wrapping your head around secondaries and putting yourself in a good position there.
So Sadi asked a question
doable.
About, like, are you talking about taking the MCAT the summer before or the summer you are sending the application? So let's assume this graph, this is May 2023, October 2023. That means you're starting med school in, say it with me, 2024.
Yep.
It's a long application cycle, friends. Ideally, you have your score back by the time applications open up. It's okay to delay a little bit. Always take the MCAT when you're ready. And so anytime before May 2023 is ideal.
Mm-hmm.
So could you take it the summer before? You could. You're probably not ready, though, because you probably don't have all of your prereqs done.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really confusing about this cycle is the cycle essentially runs May to April, but the cycle includes all of the processing that the med schools need to do. The student participation part, the student submission part of the cycle is basically May to August. After that, you're mostly just waiting. And I actually have that timeline document that Verinia made for us a while ago. If that would be helpful, I can turn on screen share and show that. So let me grab it real quick here.
Ryan asks, what's an ideal time to take Casper or Vita? How do you recommend preparing for it? Vita is no longer a thing, and AAMC canceled that. They now have the preview, and Casper is still a thing. So those are both kind of considered secondary timeline, so kind of May, June, July-ish. There you go.
Another good one to screenshot. So look, I mean, the bulk of the work is in the yellow, right? Even though this goes an 18-month timeline, right? Most of what you who are on this call are doing is happening Jan to June. Because ideally by July, most of your secondaries are completed.
We should update this to include the SJT stuff. It's missing
Yeah,
here.
we should. Good point. Y'all get your screenshots.
Going once, going twice.
All right. What are other questions we've got?
If my stats are not the greatest, Jean St. Pierre asks, what is the earliest we should hit the submit button? So Courtney, if someone's planning on trying to time submission based on stats, thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's going to depend on what your academic timeline looks like. If you are a senior graduating and your transcript comes out in June, wait for that transcript. If you're in a post-bac program and you are in that post-bac, sometimes they'll want to see those at least one semester of your post-bac. So it may push you back a cycle, because if you're trying to show an upward trend and you don't have enough of an upward trend showing, or they want to see graduate level work. So if you are looking at that, that's a little bit different answer, but yeah, it's just going to depend on what's outstanding or if it's not outstanding when you're doing that.
Okay.
A lot of if-thens.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, typically earlier is almost always better. So let's see. When should you submit your secondaries if you don't have time to pre-write them? As early as possible. Yeah. Are you asking when should you submit your primary if you don't have time to pre-write your secondaries? That's a potential different question. And there's some strategy around that. I actually released I think it was an Ask Dr. Gray episode recently about that strategy. If you know you're submitting your application July 10th, and medical schools can, at least in the MD world, can see that you submitted your application and potentially send you a secondary, should you potentially only add 4 schools so that you can work on those secondaries? And then you add 4 more, and then you add 4 more, and then you add 4 more. So you don't sit on 20 schools secondaries while you're writing all of them, and their schools are like, hey, like, I thought you wanted to come to us.
But so then I feel like this is one of those things that's highly subjective, because you're kind of arguing the data point that matters the most is I turned it around promptly to make that school look important to me. But you also just drew us this big graph that is, well, the later I apply, the less my chances. So if I do 4 at a time, that still means there's 4 or 5 schools that don't get secondaries until the line starts to go way low. I mean, I hear what you're saying, Ryan, but I also just think, like, don't overthink it, you know?
Yeah, but yes. And I think there is a huge psychological barrier that hits students when they have 20 schools, secondary essays sitting in their email inbox, and they give up. I see it every year. Students just give up.
That's
They're
true.
Like,
that
I'm
is
not
a good
going to
point.
do it.
So yeah, the psychology of it might matter more than the technicality of the submission. It is part of why I talk about pre-writing, because pre-writing to me doesn't mean you have to have 100% done. So again, we keep doing that math. 20 schools might be roughly 80 essays. If you pre-write even 30 or 40, you're going to feel so much better. And if you pre-write 30 or 40, and then the schools send the secondaries, and it turns out that 10% of the essays change, so you have to rewrite 3 or 4 of the essays that you already wrote, you are not going to be sad about having successfully pre-written 27 essays. right? So there's this idea of like, oh, I have to wait and see the official. They don't change that often. Some schools do. Most schools keep the same essays year after year after year. It's pretty safe to pre-write.
That is true. There's a question about someone wanting to do orthopedic surgery, and does applying DO hurt their chances? I'm going to answer that with Courtney getting an option to say all of my students match into all of the specialties. But we can look at the data, right? The NRMP gives out some pretty good data in terms of matches by specialty and applicant type. As I pull it up here, if you Google NRMP match data, it'll take you to some fun information. And here's this page. This is table 2. And if we go down to orthopedics, I wish it was like an Excel sheet where
you need freeze row at the top.
Yeah, freeze row. So number of positions, number filled, MD senior, MD grad. So MD senior, the definition of this is you're a graduating student this year. MD grad is you already graduated, and for some reason, either you didn't match or you didn't apply to the match because you were taking a research year to make yourself more competitive. That's who these people are. Same thing for DOs. Others, I'm not sure who those are. US citizen, international medical graduates, so students who go to the Caribbean or somewhere else. Non-US citizen, IMGs, so they're either a practicing physician in another country and they want to do their training here, or they're from like Canada and they go to a Caribbean and then they want to come here to train. If we go down to orthopedic surgery, so 875 spots available, 875 spots filled. 705 of those spots were by graduating US MD allopathic students. 36 were from US graduates, MD graduates, so they've already graduated. 111 were DO students who were graduating that year, 4 who had already graduated. So we can't look at this information and go, oh, it's better to be an MD student, because there are just more MD graduates every year than DO graduates. And so it's hard to look at this data without looking at the actual number of applicants for each. I think that data is somewhere here. So you just have to look. I'm not going to scroll through, but go look at that data. Courtney, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up that in the context, there are more MD students than there are DO students. And so the ratios may sway at some point. I know that plastics is one I haven't seen a change in. If you wanted to go into plastics, because I've looked at this number for a good long time, you know, because it had to do with admission to my school. But yeah, I think a lot of it is going to depend on you as a student and how much you hustle. And I cannot state that enough, because if you want an opportunity, you can make it happen if you go at any school in the US. But it's, you know, I have somebody matching orthopedics tomorrow.
Nice.
They matched, they got the letter that they matched. They only applied orthopedics. He's going to be in Columbus.
Yeah.
Very happy for him. He was there actually. He was doing his audition rotation when we were all there for the meeting.
Wait, how do you know where he matched already? You see that data?
I can't
answer that question.
Okay, good.
But he's matching orthopedic. I know that.
Nice. Okay. We don't know where yet. Shh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
the options are endless.
There's a lot of like, oh, wait, can you go back? Can you do some deep analysis of this specialty? I see that happening in the chat.
Getting way ahead of yourself.
Yeah.
What happened last year is not going to indicate what's going to happen for you 5 years from now. The numbers are not that static. For one thing, the numbers are too small to be that static, right? Like small numbers have big percentage variations. But the big message we're trying to convey here is if 11%, I think, is roughly the number of positions that are DO. So if you see 700 MD and 100 DO in a certain specialty, that means the DO representation in that specialty is going up. Like just take your statistics knowledge, right? Read these charts with some common sense.
You can show them the emergency medicine numbers.
Hey, Courtney, weren't
Matt?
we supposed to lose you?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna hop off to do
He's
a
got
Q&A.
3 whole minutes, man.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I was worried about 3:30 my time. So never mind. Okay.
Nope.
You're good.
I think
All
all
right.
the academies start on the hour, not the half hour. Just
Yep.
for no reason. They just do.
Anyway.
So that's a good time to plug Application Academy. Courtney has to go because she's going to go teach some group admissions advising. So
Yep.
instead of, 100 of you or however many of you here now, 70 plus, she's going to be hanging out with 10 or 15 students.
Yep. What's the session today?
Today's actually open Q&A, so we're probably going to
Nice.
be doing a mix of whatever's most pressing to people. So kind of a hodgepodge, but I like that day. And just answering kind of one-off questions, make sure everybody's on the right track. So I guess I'll
Probably
hop off now.
Probably a lot of AACOMAS questions too. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tomorrow I'm doing personal statement conclusion. So if any of you want to
Nice.
join and start working on your personal statement
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow with me.
I did personal statement seeds earlier this week, and literally someone submitted her 6th version of her seed. And it
Oh,
finally all came together, and we shed a few tears together. We were so happy.
Nice.
Like, these essays are not easy. It takes reflection and time. And I read it and I was just like, you nailed it. And it took a lot of trials to get there.
they are asking for more sessions to be devoted to activities, so we can make sure
Yeah.
that we're moving through all the submissions and stuff. So
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna jump off just so it's not awkward. I'm not like, yeah, I'll be in half
Mhm.
this question. So have fun,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Bye.
All right. Let me look. I have 1,900 plus hours of scribing in the span of 3 years. Stopped in 2022. Is that a red flag to admissions? Talk about this all the time, right, Rachel? Of like, check, I got it.
Yeah.
1,900 hours is a lot. And why'd you stop? Like, why are you doing nothing? Rather, is maybe a better question. So, Samuel, the first question to you is: are you doing nothing clinical, or did you just stop scribing? That's the question. And I know Samuel's still here because he thanks Courtney for being here.
Yeah. I stopped.
I stopped clinical for now. So that's a potential question.
And what are you doing with your time instead, Samuel? How are you spending your time right now? What's primarily occupying your hours?
I was twiddling my thumbs for those who didn't see that.
Oh yeah, I wasn't sure what that was about.
That's what I'm doing with my time, twiddling my thumbs.
And so, not to put you on the spot, Samuel, but just to help people kind of think this through. I'm currently involved in studying for the MCAT. Yeah. I mean, I do see.
Yeah, it's very common.
It's very common. But since October, I mean, MCAT prep can be 3 to 6 months. Often if it's 6 months, it's because it's part-time, but it's March. So yeah, it's been just about 6 months. I don't know when you're taking the exam. The thing about activities is, like, the 2 words we tend to use are recency and consistency.
Yeah.
I don't need to see you spend 40 hours a week in clinical, especially if you've got school and MCAT, and maybe you have people in your family who depend on you, and somewhere in there you should be allowed to sleep and eat. But if you can get even 5 or 10 hours of clinical a month, and you do that every month, your entire pre-med process, I'm not even that worried. I mean, one, that'll be pretty good numbers. You'll at least be up to a couple hundred, but more importantly, it'll show that you're committed. Where if you do clinical and stop, I'm not saying this is true about you, Samuel. He says, no, please do put me in the spotlights. That's great. Thanks for letting me call you out on your shiz. Is you send me the message that you didn't like it. I'm not saying it's true, but if you stopped doing clinical and then you write me an essay that says, I want to dedicate my life to doing clinical, why would I believe you? You're not even doing it right now.
Yeah. So I pulled up this application for those who are looking. This is from a application renovation episode that I just recorded. We're starting season 5. I can't believe we've recorded that many. Look at these stats: 394, 516. Right? Stats are not an issue for the student. But then when we look at activities, here's what I see. I see a student who went on a medical trip to Mali, went for 1 month here, supposedly went from 1 month here. That actually didn't happen. But obviously they didn't know that when they submitted their application. They had community service there. And then here was their medical clinical, their big chunk of medical clinical, and it ended December of the year that they applied. So just a couple months after their submission date. And after that, there's nothing else on their application other than, I think, one random thing here, pickleball, that actually went to when they were submitting, when they were potentially starting med school. And I'm like, that doesn't paint a very good picture for what you're doing in your spare time. Now, I get a lot of pushback from students who say, well, like, I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to do that. Like, nobody's saying these have to be full-time jobs, but consistently getting a few hours here and there is ideal to show continued interest. Now, here's another thing you should not do. I'll point it out real quick. Obviously, I'm not calling this student out because they already are coming on application renovation. So they wrote their essay and they were talking about wrestling. Wrestling was one of their things. And they said, wrestling was lonely. It usually caused a flood of emotions and questions. I wondered if I had prepared enough, questioned whether I was good enough, and most importantly here, my addition, pondered whether I might regret opportunities lost. I have similar feelings applying to medical school. I told that student, that was your dagger.
Yeah.
You just told them you're not sure you want to apply to med school.
That's interesting because I do believe that's true. I also read this as I didn't have time for thousands of hours of clinical, but I had thousands of hours to be on the mat wrestling. And I come from a wrestling family.
Yeah.
I have enormous respect for the amount of discipline. Like, I mean, any athletic activity is going to require discipline, but wrestling is a special kind of discipline. So it's not a slam on the sport at all. It's like, you've told me very clearly where your priorities lie, and medicine isn't at the top of the list.
Yep. Yeah. And he's working full time now. It's just not clinical and not anything.
As a
It's not
wrestling
on his
coach?
application. No, he actually only wrestled his freshman year of college because then the school got rid of the program.
Mm.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that was, sorry, a long-winded thing to show what it potentially looks like to an admissions committee when you see these activities just stop. And then it's like, well, now what? Remember, and I've been vocalizing this, I've just kind of figured out how to put this into words. The application is the only context that these admissions committee members have. They aren't able to call you up on the phone and go, hey, Johnny, I see this. Can I ask for some clarification? It's all they have. You have to paint the biggest picture for them.
Yep.
The Application Academy that is registration due for two, is that who want to submit their application summer 2024? No. So if you're applying next year in 2024 to start medical school in 2025, you'll sign up for Application Academy later this year.
Yeah, probably this fall.
Excuse me.
But if you're hoping to start med school in 2024 and you would like to join Application Academy, you've got 2 more weeks to make your decision. And then we will be closing so that we can spend all of April and May focusing on people who are already enrolled, helping them hit that finish line. We are doing Application Academy previews. What we're doing now feels a little bit like an Application Academy open Q&A. But next week, we're doing some previews where we'll do live essay reviews so you can really get a sense of what group advising feels like. I'm a huge fan of group advising. I think you learn more when you hear answers to other people's questions.
Yep. Nishka, I don't know if this is the same person that asked it earlier, but I've seen this question a couple of times. What does it mean for applications to be verified and to get secondaries? Vernia, what do you think there?
Nishka, when you apply, AMCAS will, let's say you're applying to AMCAS, you know, they'll take the time to go through all your coursework, all your information, everything you've entered, verify all that. Basically, it's just a quality check, making sure that everything matches what's on your transcript, making any necessary changes if they determine a class is not where it's supposed to be, whatever that is. That process can take several weeks because they're going through your application with a fine-tooth comb. For some schools, they will wait until they get that completely verified application to send out your secondary. But other schools, as soon as they see that you kind of selected them or designated them to apply to them, they will automatically send out your secondary.
Yeah, good point. Especially once transmission to med schools has begun. Right.
So that's why kind of the timing of your application is so important, because yes, you'll apply whatever when it opens, but you won't submit it until the end of May, and then it takes AMCAS several weeks to actually go through everything and verify that your application is complete. So if you're applying later in July or August, you have to add in another just 4 to 6 weeks of waiting for your application to get verified, which is pushing your, the medical school, which is pushing your application later, right? So the medical school won't get it until they've gone through that 4 to 6 week wait.
Yeah. Maddie, how should I put in the application if I didn't stop an activity? I just put it on pause to study for the MCAT, like my research assistant position and my volunteering, but I go back in April and will be continuing even when the app goes in. So that's a good question. I'll share my screen one more time just to show kind of what that looks like on an application. So if we see here, right, these completed dates, you have the option under completed dates to say, okay, 10/17 to 3/20/18, and then actually I came back in September of 2019 and went to March of 2021. So you can put multiple entry dates in. Usually I don't recommend that. If it's just a couple month hiatus, just ignore it and just go out to the normal end date, because almost all the time there's going to be breaks and vacations and other stuff that are normal. So I wouldn't worry too much about it.
Yeah, you can list up to 4 instances, I think. And I agree with Ryan. If it's just a break of a couple months, I would just do start and end. And then you can also list dates that are projected. And that's different. So if you have friends who did AMCAS a few years ago, before it was just everything you've done up until when med school starts. Now it's 2 separate buckets. So there are the instances of dates that are in the past and that hour count. And then there's a separate instance that is projecting forward up to and when med school starts. So basically, if you start a clinical job next week and you have 2 months of experience or 3 months of experience when you apply, that's great. If you're going to keep doing the job for the next 12 months, I also think that's great. That's a separate line. AMCAS will make you differentiate the past and the past from the projected future.
Should we submit? I saw this question a bunch. Should we submit with an old score? We have a pending score. How do schools handle that? Et cetera, et cetera. All right. So schools will see that you have a pending MCAT score. I think I had an application actually that showed what that looks like. Yeah. So actually the same application, it was a little bit weird. I'll show what it looks like. Again, this is not exactly what med schools see, because med schools get individual data points, but you can see there's this additional data point here where it says additional 2022 MCAT intent date. Now, this was a little bit weird because the score came out around, let's assume 6/19/2022. And the reason that this is here is because this was processed on 7/22. Wait. It was submitted 6/19 rather. Yeah. So they submitted it just a couple days before the MCAT score was out. So it has this weird thing there. Mm-hmm. So schools will see that you have an additional date that you're pending a score for, and they'll probably just sit on your application and wait. I think it's a weird question for me. It's like, schools are allowed to give you a second chance, or students are allowed to have second chances, right? You're not supposed to be perfect in this process. You don't have to have a 520 the first time you take your MCAT or at all, right? But if you get a 495 on your first MCAT score, your first MCAT take, your official, medical schools aren't going to hold that against you for the rest of your life. If you come back and get a 509, they're going to be like, wonderful, great. Now we'll look at your application. You meet our minimums, whatever. Any other good questions you guys are seeing?
Some questions about gap year jobs. Should we put that on like a planned or a potential future activity? Yes, Samantha, you can put that on your application and you would put anticipated hours. It's a little harder to kind of talk about that in an application because there's no kind of experiences to talk about. But potentially in a secondary, you can definitely elaborate there.
Let's take a couple minutes. Some people have been asking about academy pricing, about discounts. I can open up our screen slides again. We'll still do a little bit more Q&A, but we'll take a minute and just let you guys know about some of the options we have available, since people are asking in the chat about how they can get enrolled. Oh, did I lose my file? So I said I was going to screen share, and then it turns out my file went away. Please stand by. There we go. All right. So yeah, you guys had asked about Application Academy. As we mentioned, if you're hoping to start med school in 2024, which means you're applying this spring, you need to enroll by April 2nd. It's currently 100 off. So someone had asked about a webinar specific discount. It's a everybody get enrolled in the next 2 weeks discount. So it's already built in. If you go to applicationacademy.com, the $100 discount is already built right into the price. So you can go check that out. Application Academy to me is one of the best things Ryan ever invented. And I think that's saying a lot because this is a man who's invented a lot of things. But for so long, admissions advising has been one-on-one, which essentially means it's tutoring and it's tutoring rates. Private instruction is always going to be very expensive. And the truth is, most of us are very used to learning in groups. You think about your entire K through 12 and most of your collegiate experience, you learned in groups. We're good at learning in groups. We benefit from community. So I love Application Academy. I think it's amazing value. You get basically 10 hours a week, about to be 14 hours a week with TAs. So 10 to 15 hours a week of assistance in a group format for 52 weeks. So for $500, you're getting more than 500 hours of instruction. It's basically $1 an hour. There's just no reason not to do it, in my opinion, if you can swing that amount. If you are interested in private feedback, we also have that. So we have one-on-one SAQ.
One quick thing about Application Academy, because of the environment that it's in, we also offer FAP discounts as well.
Oh, yeah.
It allows us to offer FAP discounts.
Good point. Right, because the one-on-one we really can't discount because that's about the advisor's time. But with the Academy, if you go to the applicationacademy.com, go to the FAQ, you'll see the fee assistance plan. That's what Ryan means when he says FAP. If you qualify for fee assistance from AMCAS or AACOMAS, you can also qualify for fee assistance with us and get Application Academy for half the normal tuition. So instead of normally $600, it would be $300. And you can break that into installments too. Anything else about Academy before I move on to one-on-one?
There's a question in the chat. What if we don't need 52 weeks? Is there a 6-month option?
Not currently.
Unfortunately, no.
And here's the thing, you might need longer than you think, right? Because if you join right now, we're going to spend the next 3 or 4 months helping you with your primary application, pre-writing your secondaries. But then in the summer and fall, we're going to do interview prep. And then, yeah, there is a period there where you're just waiting, but you could have interviews as late as next March. So even if you don't attend Academy for several months, it's still there. You can pop back in when you get winter or spring interviews. If you're lucky enough to get multiple choices, if you get on wait lists, that cycle essentially runs, like I said, from May to April. You may be happy that you've got Academy, that you have a place, even if you haven't gone for several months, where you can drop in and ask questions about some of the end of the application experience questions.
Yep. So Application Academy doesn't end in April. We're closing registration in April. Application Academy runs year long. So you can start now. But if you're not applying until next year, I'd probably wait until the end of this year when we reopen at some point in the fall.
Yep. All right. But not everyone likes to learn in group, or some people want group plus one-on-one. So if you only want essay review feedback, that's available. You can sign up. All of this is medicalschoolheadquarters.net, medicalschoolhq.net. If you go to the advising tab, you'll see all these choices. So we do have one-on-one essay review. Verinia here is our primary essay feedback person. We all do essay feedback, but Verinia is she made that joke before about being the backbone. Verinia, talk about essay review. What are the common pitfalls?
Sure, I meant the posterior though. Not the
you meant the rear,
I'm
not
just
the
kidding.
spine.
I'm just kidding. Sorry. So essay review, just kind of talk about the package you were saying?
Well, just about what kind of help you give. What are the problems, the common issues
Yeah.
you help people overcome?
Yeah, so oftentimes, depending on your essay, personal statement, whatever it may be, students struggle with just finding their why, or at least finding the words to talk about their why medicine. So they'll submit a draft, we'll review it together, either on a live call or through written feedback where I just read their essay and send back comments and talk a little bit about, reflection, looking back, what got you to this point, what got you interested in medicine. We go through all of that and then eventually arrive at hopefully a nice polished personal statement that really showcases who they are. Their voice is coming through and I can understand reading it, why they're doing this. That's really it.
Great. And then we also have one-on-one application cycle prep. Verinia and Courtney are the primary people who are taking students for that right now. I will warn you, that's a first come, first serve thing. And although it doesn't have an official close date, I think we're getting pretty close. So again, if this is something you're interested in, you'll want to make a decision in the next few weeks. What's the difference, Verinia, between essay only help and this more kind of comprehensive option?
Sure. So essay only help. We're just working on your essay. We're just working on your writing. I love essay feedback. I really enjoy reading people's stories and helping them find their voice. One-on-one application cycle prep is more, you're working with an advisor throughout every stage of the process. And the way it's designed is you select a certain number of hours and you use those hours in however way you want to use them, whether it's, let's say you need a lot of help with your writing. You'll meet with your advisor and use your hours for that. Or maybe you just need, more interview assistance later on, right? More interview prep. So you'll use your hours for that. You'll always work with the same advisor each time. So that's a nice benefit because you really get to know your advisor really gets to know you.
Great. So all of that at medicalschoolhq.net, lots of options for help. Do we have any other questions we want to take here?
Questions about letters. Sorry, letters of recommendation. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was scrolling through earlier some questions about the timing of when to submit letters, committee letters, that whole process. Yeah, so if you're going through a committee letter process, your school kind of controls that process. They get the letters of recommendation, they write a committee letter for you. And you're sort of you have to go based on their timeline. If they're submitting your letter later in the summer, you should be okay. It won't theoretically hold up your application. You can submit without those letters. If that's their process, it's probably been working fine. But remember that if you're kind of on the fence about whether or not you have to go through a committee letter process, you really don't. You can just use individual letters. If it makes you feel better, have them sent in earlier on in the cycle. I saw that question here. Anything else about letters? No. Okay. Anything else?
Is there a benefit to committee letters? A minor benefit potentially for some med schools, but no.
I mean, honestly, it seems like the benefit is to the admissions committees. They like a committee
Yeah.
letter because it saves them time. They can read
Saves them.
one letter instead of 3.
Mhm.
But I see someone else had asked about, in this case, individual letters that might not be strong. And that's a hard case to fix. But sometimes committee letters, sometimes the committees will clearly state, here are things you have to do to get a highly recommend. And if you know you're not going to qualify, just because your school offers a committee letter doesn't mean you have to take it. If you think you can get a stronger letter of rec package, compiling one on your own, don't be afraid to do it.
Our Deshir, I put a link in there. E-shadowing does have replays. We put them up on YouTube. eShadowing.com/archive.
Abdul wants to know if there's a benefit to an MPH, MBA, or MHA before medical school applications. So
I mean, if
does
you've
it
got
help?
$50,000 to burn and those sound like fun things to learn, you go right ahead. I don't think any of them are going to help your application because none of them are science-based.
There you go.
Sorry, I got a little snarky there. I just jumped right in over you.
That's
It's
okay.
a classic mistake, Abdul.
Yeah.
People think, oh, I'll go get an MPH. That'll help my application.
Yeah.
Why? It's like getting a degree in sociology. It helps me know you're a reader and writer and you might care about society. It doesn't do anything for proving to me that you're ready to handle the rigorous sciences of med school.
Yep. And the last thing I want to talk about is MappedCon 2023 in Baltimore, Maryland, October 6th through the 8th. I just got confirmation that Hopkins student-run emergency response team called Hero just confirmed that they're going to run the Stop the Bleed CPR and taking blood pressure workshops on Sunday. We're going to have workshops. We have tons of sessions, lots of meet and greets. Being around other people who are passionate like you are, who are on the same path, is empowering. It's invigorating. It is so, so powerful. We were talking to a student earlier and they're like, what's the point of going to a conference? I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much energy at a conference. You just get reinvigorated and just, it's amazing. So we're putting on our first conference. We're hoping to have 1,000 students at the Hilton Inner Harbor in Baltimore, October 6th through the 8th. So go check it out. Early bird pricing is in effect right now. MappedCon.com. I'll type that here.
It's great too if you're at a larger institution where you sort of feel lost, right? You don't have that sense of community, or maybe your friends and family don't really understand what you're going through. Just being in that environment and being around other people just like you is so super motivating.
Yep. It's wunderbar. All right, friends. Have we come to the end?
I think so.
Looks like.
Thank you everyone for coming. Thanks for staying so engaged, asking questions. Yes, we will share the recording. It typically gets emailed out within about 24 hours. So you can rewatch at your little heart's content.
Yep. Good luck, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.